Welcome to the deep dive. We sort of sift through dense sources to pull out the key insights, really giving you a shortcut to being well-informed without getting bogged down.
Yeah, think of it as your curated guide. We know you're looking for those aha moments.
Exactly. Especially you, the learner. You're curious. You want that quick, thorough understanding. And today we're digging into cloud security.
Right. Our mission is to unpack this really interesting report from the Cloud Security Alliance's Top Threats Working Group, specifically their deep dive document.
And this looks at recent, actual, real-world cloud breaches. The sources you shared give us a great window into this.
They really do. We're using excerpts from the CSA topthreats.pdf document itself.
Okay, so maybe a little background first. The Cloud Security Alliance, CSA, they're pretty central in this space, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Their Top Threats Working Group, their whole job is to help organizations stay ahead of cloud security risks. They use expert analysis, look at vulnerabilities.
To help people make smarter decisions about the cloud. Makes sense.
And these deep dive reports are a big part of that. They have their annual top threats survey, which is kind of a broad look.
What security pros are worried about generally?
Exactly. But the deep dive gets much more specific. It actually takes apart real cloud breaches, looks at the sequence of events, the root causes.
So less theoretical risk, more. This is what actually happened.
Precisely. Moving from the forecast to the actual storm damage, like you said earlier.
And who is this really for? I mean, obviously cloud security people, right?
Well, yes, definitely cloud and security practitioners, but also compliance teams, risk management, tech staff, even executives.
So pretty much anyone whose organization relies on the cloud, which is almost everyone now.
It really is. If you're using cloud services, these insights matter for building resilience, making smart choices.
Okay, so in this deep dive, what are we covering? We'll look at the methodology, how they did this.
Yeah, how the report is structured, how they link that big 2024 survey to these detailed case studies of, I think it's 8 recent attacks.
8. Right. And then we'll pull out the main threats they saw cropping up again and again.
And crucially, the actionable takeaways. What can you actually do with this information to improve things?
Great. Okay, let's get into that methodology then. It starts with the 2024 Top Threats Survey.
That's the foundation. They polled over 500 industry experts about their biggest cloud security concerns. So it gives you that snapshot of perceived importance.
What people think are the biggest problems.
Right. But then the deep dive looks at how those worries actually play out in the real world. That's where the 8 case studies come in.
Investigating how those perceived threats led to actual incidents.
Exactly. It's that reality check. They dissect these recent well-known cloud attacks and breaches.
And the structure for each case study sounds useful. A threat model.
Yeah, it's like a quick summary, who the attackers were, what they wanted, the vulnerabilities they used, the impact, both technical and business.
Like a blueprint of the attack.
Kinda, yeah. And then there's a detailed narrative that gives you the backstory, how it happened, and maybe how it could have been stopped.
Very practical. And these 8 cases, they cover a lot of ground, don't they?
They do. You've got the Snowflake customer data breaches from this year, Football Australia, CrowdStrike.
Toyota from last year, Dark Beam, Retool and Fortress.
FTX, yeah, and the Microsoft breach also from this year. So a real mix of attack types and targets.
Okay, that sets the stage nicely. Let's get into the core findings then. The key threats that kept showing up in these cases. They group them in tiers.
Yeah, based on frequency. Tier 1 are the most frequent ones they appeared in, like 4 to 7 of the 8 incidents.
Okay, what's top of the list?
Unsurprisingly, it's IAM, Identity and Access Management.
Always seems to come back to who can access what, doesn't it?
It really does. The report points to weak access controls, not using multi-factor authentication, privilege escalation. Basically, attackers getting in and getting more power than they should have.
Like leaving the door unlocked and the master key lying around.
Pretty much, yeah. It's fundamental stuff. If you don't control who gets in and what they can do, you're asking for trouble.
And the Snowflake breach was a prime example. The lack of 2FA, two-factor authentication.
Exactly. For some of the targeted accounts, that basic layer of identity verification just wasn't there, and attackers walked right in. It really shows how vital MFA is.
Okay, what else is in Tier 1?
Misconfiguration and inadequate change control. This is all about cloud environments not being set up securely or changes being made that introduce vulnerabilities.
So like setting things up wrong initially or making a change that accidentally opens a door?
Right. Cloud environments are complex. Things are always changing. And it's easy for settings to drift or for mistakes to happen, leading to data exposure, sometimes for a long time.
We saw examples of that, didn't we? Football Australia.
Yeah, they had a publicly accessible AWS S3 bucket just open to the world.
And Toyota, too. Public access settings left on for ages.
Yeah, for years in that case.
Yeah.
These seem like basic mistakes, but the consequences can be huge.
Wow. Okay, the third one in Tier 1.
Insecure software development. So this is about weaknesses baked into the software itself because of how it was built or deployed.
Flaws introduced during the coding or release process.
Exactly. Things like hard-coded credentials, passwords, literally written into the code.
Which happened with Football Australia again, right? In their website source code.
Mm-hmm. It's like leaving the key under the mat, but digitally. And even security vendors aren't immune. Think about the CrowdStrike issue. A faulty update caused massive problems.
Shows that even with the best intentions, development slip-ups can have big security impacts.
Definitely. Okay, so moving down to Tier 2. These were the notable threats, showing up in 3 of the 8 cases. First up is insecure interfaces and APIs.
APIs, the way different applications talk to each other in the cloud.
That's right. Application programming interfaces. If they're exposed to the internet or not properly secured, they become attack vectors. Easy ways in.
And the Microsoft breach fit this category, something about a test account.
Yeah, a test account had access through an OAuth application with way too many permissions in their main corporate environment. O lets apps act on your behalf.
So the attackers use that test account access to get deeper in.
Exactly. They leverage that initial foothold via the insecure interface to gain more access. Shows how a seemingly small gap can be exploited.
Right. Okay. Second Tier 2 threat.
Inadequate selection or implementation of a cloud security strategy. This is broader organizations just not having a clear plan or roadmap for security in the cloud.
Leading to gaps in governance, risk management.
Yeah. Without a solid strategy, it's hard to be consistent, hard to make sure you're covering all the bases.
And Toyota comes up again here. The misconfigurations lasted a decade, partly because they weren't doing routine checks or audits.
That's what the report suggests. It highlights that security isn't just a setup task. It needs ongoing strategic focus and regular reviews. You can't just assume it's okay.
Makes sense. What else is in Tier 2?
System vulnerabilities, classic stuff like unpatched software, old configurations, and then accidental cloud disclosure.
Human error again. Just accidentally exposing data through cloud settings.
Pretty much, yeah. Simple mistakes in configuration. We saw that link with Football Australia and Toyota too.
Okay, and finally Tier 3. Less frequent in these specific breaches, but still important.
Absolutely. Still worth knowing about. First is limited cloud visibility or observability.
Meaning you can't see what's happening, so breaches go undetected.
Right. Like in the Microsoft case, they mentioned identifying the malicious activity sort of after the fact. Better visibility might have caught it sooner.
Then unauthenticated resource sharing.
Just leaving cloud resources like storage open to the public without requiring any login. Football Australia and Darkbeam had issues here.
Next is insecure third-party resources, the supply chain risk.
Yeah, relying on vendors or services that have their own vulnerabilities. The CrowdStrike outage wasn't a breach of CrowdStrike, but it showed the impact a third party can have. You depend on them.
And the last one is APT's advanced persistent threats.
Right. These are the sophisticated attackers, maybe state-sponsored or organized crime groups. They use credential theft, they escalate privileges, move laterally inside the network.
Like the suspected state actor in the Microsoft breach or the financially motivated group hitting Snowflake customer.
Exactly. They're persistent and methodical.
So it's interesting then to compare these findings, what actually happened in the breaches, with the results of the big survey of what experts were worried about.
It is. The report makes that distinction clearly. The survey shows perceived importance. The deep dive shows observed frequency in real incidents.
And there were differences, right? Like IAM identity and access management was #1 in the deep dive frequency, but ranked lower in the survey.
Yeah, that was a key difference noted.
What do you make of that? Maybe experts know IAM is important, but perhaps underestimated just how often it's the direct cause or enabler of major breaches.
That could be it. Or maybe the survey captures a wider range of complex concerns, while the breaches often boil down to these, fundamental failures in areas like IAM and configuration.
Yeah.
It really shows why you need both views, the expert perception and the hard data from incidents.
Get the full picture. Okay, so we've got the methodology, the key threats observed. Let's pivot to the really crucial part, the actionable lessons. What should listeners, take away from all this?
Right, the practical stuff. The first big one is that cloud security has got to account for human error and just the persistence of threats. You have to assume mistakes will happen.
And attackers are always looking.
Always. So it means you need this continuous cycle. Auditing what you have, automating checks where possible, training people, and really learning from incidents when they do happen. It's about resilience.
Not perfection, but resilience. Okay, takeaway number 2. Back to IAM.
Absolutely central. Strong identity and access management, MFA, least privilege, managing privileged accounts properly. PAM. These aren't just nice to haves. They're essential.
And the report hammers this home with examples from Snowflake, Retool and Fortress, FTX, Microsoft.
Yeah, it shows weakness in IAM is just constantly exploited. Getting IAM right is probably one of the highest impact things you can do for cloud security.
Okay. Third takeaway, shared responsibility.
That reminder that it's not just on the cloud provider and it's not just on the customer. It's both.
So users need to configure things right, manage access, monitor their stuff?
Exactly. And providers need to offer secure defaults, make it easier to be secure, and watch for abuse on their platforms. It's a partnership.
Got it. Number 4, continuous monitoring and real-time detection.
Yeah, you can't just set it up and walk away. You need automated monitoring, systems looking for anomalies, centralized logs, ways to spot trouble quickly.
Because some of these breaches went undetected for ages, right? Like Toyota and Darkbeam.
They did. And the longer an attacker is in, the more damage they can do. Early detection is critical to limiting the blast radius.
Okay, 5th takeaway, supply chain security. Getting more important all the time.
Definitely. As we use more third-party services, integrations, SaaS tools, each one is a potential risk point.
So you need to vet your vendors, monitor those connections.
Right. Understand their security posture, the CrowdStrike outage, the Retool and Fortress breach linked to a third-party authentication change. They really highlight this dependency risk. How well do you know your vendor's security?
Good question. Okay, number 6, proactive cloud governance.
This is about having the policies, the standards, the regular reviews in place to prevent gaps from opening up or sticking around.
Like preventing another decade-long misconfiguration issue like Toyota's.
Exactly. Weak governance lets things slip through the cracks. You need strong policies, secure baselines, regular reviews to enforce them. It's about building that security culture.
And the report also touches on needing cloud-specific incident response plans.
Yeah, traditional plans might not cut it for the cloud's complexity.
And finally, testing security beyond just production, like in dev and test environments.
Right, because vulnerabilities there can still be exploited, as Microsoft found out with that test account. Security needs to cover the whole life cycle.
Wow, okay. Those are some really solid, actionable takeaways. It brings it all together.
They really do. They show the recurring themes. And, if navigating all this feels overwhelming, getting expert help can make a huge difference. That's where services like our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.services, can come in. They connect organizations with the right security expertise.
That's a great point. Check them out at www.cisomarketplace.services. So wrapping up our deep dive on this CSA report, we've walked through the methodology, the threats they saw again and again in real breaches, and these really important lessons.
And the core message seems pretty clear, doesn't it? These real-world breaches keep highlighting the basics. Strong IAM, proper configuration, watching things continuously, and being careful about your supply chain.
They're not exotic new threats necessarily, but failures in fundamental security practices.
Often, yes. That's why this deep dive is so valuable. It connects the dots between the things we worry about and the things that are actually causing incidents. It gives you practical focus areas.
So for you listening, maybe take these takeaways and think about your own situation. Where might you have gaps based on these common patterns? What steps can you take?
It's a really useful exercise. Assess your own posture against these recurring themes. And again, if you need support figuring that out or implementing changes, resources like our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.services, are there to help.
Definitely worth looking into. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. We see these same issues. IAM, misconfiguration, lack of monitoring popping up repeatedly. Given that, what really needs to change fundamentally across the industry to stop making these same mistakes over and over?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What's it going to take to truly shift the needle?
Something to think about. We definitely encourage you to check out the full CSA Top Threats research for more detail. You can find it at cloudsecurityalliance.org, Research Working Group Stop Threats.
Until our next deep dive, stay curious and stay secure out there in the cloud.